Before we get started today, I want to give a big thank you to the devs for the early game code for Wild Blue Skies. That was very cool of you, and I appreciate it. Just a heads up that there are spoilers in this review. I have marked the spoiler-heavy sections in the description so you can skip or watch them if you would like. In addition to this, the timestamp to skip the first spoiler-heavy section should be on the screen right now. Let's do this. Chuhai Labs is an independent game studio and publisher based in the birthplace of Nintendo, Kyoto, Japan. We founded Chuhai Labs in 2020 as a brand of Vitae Backroom. Started by industry and Nintendo veteran Giles Goddard, our studio innovates through unique game design, Bet
you can't follow me, Bowie.
Pretty smooth flying, Fox.
Can you keep up?
You'll never defeat Andros!
Fun can't let you do that,
I've been looking for
Andros has ordered us to take you down.
nicely.
Kathy, long time no see.
It's correct.
Andros' enemy is my enemy. Just what I need to see.
dirty work
Star
now.
Wars.
Hey, Flowers. Time for a little payback.
Playtime is over.
Doesn't
Star.
belong, Bowie.
I think I'll torture you for a while.
Time for a little payback.
If I go down, I'm taking you with me. I'm back in the fucking building again! Oh my god!
And honestly, that's just scratching the surface. In the infamous words of my ex, we need to talk. Wild Blue Skies is an on-rail shooter inspired by Star Fox 64. One could argue that it's too inspired by Star Fox 64. In fact, I would argue that it's too inspired by Star Fox 64, but we'll go into that later. When this game was announced, it was met with a lot of hype from Star Fox fans who were hungry for even the tiniest little scrap of something, even if it wasn't from big ol' Nintendo itself. Some might consider Wild Blue Skies' launch to be unfortunate in that it was timed right after the release of the Star Fox 64 remake for the Nintendo Switch 2, but I would actually argue against that, given the level of hype around the Star Fox series being at an all-time high in a decade. And now that it's been over a month since that game came out, fans of the series may be looking for more to sink their teeth into. I was fortunate enough to receive a key for the game early and have spent the last few weeks flying alongside Bowie and his team, the Blue Bombers, which are in red ships. Don't ask me why, I was wondering the same thing. Do they think red make go faster? I've put several hours into the game, having replayed it a few times to get a good grasp on its highs and lows, and I can confidently say that I did not like this game. I really wanted to. I really wanted to. But unfortunately, it has a whole host of issues, and it goes deeper than just the game taking too much inspiration from Star Fox 64. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry I didn't like it. But we need to talk about why. There's a lesson to be learned here. To be entirely fair to this game, I want to start with the positives, because yes, there are good things in this game. Wild Blue Skies puts its best foot forward in the opening cinematic and its main menu, which contains striking visuals that get you excited to play the game. And that is good, because that's what an intro should absolutely do. The entire intro is just really well done. The art style is superb, and so is the animation. It feels like the start of a cartoon. Similarly, this really nice, cel-shaded art style in the menu is great. Wild Blue Skies has a vibrant palette throughout the game's entirety, and that is captured here very well. And I make mention of that because while I've already shown my hand in that I do think the game takes too much inspiration from Star Fox, this is one of the qualities I feel that Wild Blue Skies keeps original. It is always bright and colorful, And that makes the levels feel like they have an adventure-y quality to them. And it makes the game stand out quite a bit by not doing a full sci-fi space or grittier aesthetic. I have to praise the character designs, which are all really well done throughout the game. I won't go into detail about the characters not shown in the trailers, but I thought each one looked really, really good. What animal they were was really easy to tell, and I think that the core 4 characters, Chuck, Ro, Bowie, and Thorn, are all really well designed. Grimclaw as well has a stellar design, although again, I won't be showing footage of him until we're in the spoiler sections of the video. Whoever did these designs, I really do think hit the ball out of the park. I also want to praise the dialogue itself. While I do think there could be more dialogue overall in the missions or dialogue that feels a bit more meaningful instead of just, oh look, I'm being chased, what dialogue is in the game ranges from serviceable to excellent from a writing standpoint. There were some jokes that legitimately did get chuckles out of me, specifically the boss of the canyon level. I'm a sucker for silly puns, and they do have those scattered about here and there. All of the voice actors did really well, I thought. None of the dialogue felt stilted or read by anyone just showing up for the job. It was all really high quality. While all of the performances were good, I think my favorites were personally Bowie and Ro. The level villains all had that super animated, wacky villain vibe you'd get from a Saturday morning cartoon. It felt, again, just very high quality all across the board. And to be honest, while a lot of levels take inspiration from Star Fox 64, some too much inspiration, there are levels that don't. There is a level in particular that comes to mind that takes place in a cloud-filled setting. I felt like this level really properly showcased the dev team's capabilities and creativity, as it felt like an experience unique to Wild Blue Skies. One thing I actually liked was that they added 2 different kinds of level medals. There is the classic hit score medal achievement, and then there is the hunt for the 4 wild letters. This operates in a similar fashion to the Donkey Kong Country Kong letters. And while you may suspect that I would roll my eyes and be annoyed by that also being a borrowed mechanic, I actually really liked this in an on-rails setting. It was a good addition, even if borrowed from another game from another genre. They were sometimes really hard to find, but I did feel clever when I figured out where some were hiding, specifically on the Foundry level. However, despite these things, there are some issues that absolutely need to be discussed with this game. I played the demo for Wild Blue Skies, and I was concerned right out of the gate. I even streamed it! I streamed my whole reaction to it, and you can go back and watch that if you'd like. Not only did I feel that the controls and the demo lacked a level of polish that I had hoped for, but the premise of Wild Blue Skies felt entirely too inspired by Star Fox 64. Unfortunately, very soon into playing the game, I found that all of my concerns from the demo were absolutely correct to have. The Cloud Cutter is the name of the ship you are piloting, and despite its name, I actually found the ship to be incredibly slow-paced and even very difficult to maneuver sharply. It also has an incredibly slow natural firing rate. Coupled with bosses that have a surprising amount of HP, this low fire rate turned every boss fight into a slog. I initially played with the default controls and nearly went feral with how long the boss fights were taking. I did find that my experience was vastly improved when I changed the movement sensitivity to high and I changed the firing rate to continuous. The Cloud Cutter sometimes feels like it's fighting against you if you do not turn these settings on. Like it's just woken up and it's half awake and it's missing its first dose of caffeine in the morning. Turning sharply or quickly is just something the plane doesn't seem keen on doing. And that'd be fine, but there are moments in the on-rails levels that kind of call for you to do some quick turning. Again, the high sensitivity controls did help this a lot, but I'm afraid that a lot of people won't think to toggle that on when they go into their settings and wonder why the ship just isn't moving nearly as much as it seems it should be. There is also the part of the controls in which the charge shot and continuous regular fire are 2 different buttons for some reason. I did get used to this change by my second playthrough, but I still feel like it's something that was not necessarily done because it felt like a fluid gameplay decision, but more to just differentiate from Star Fox 64 arbitrarily. And that mentality is something I feel is the underlining issue with Wild Blue Skies, although I'll be going into detail about that later. Wild Blue Skies also introduces a more roguelike aspect to the on-rail genre by not letting you heal your HP between missions. You heard that right. If you barely make it through the boss of one level, guess what, Buttercup? You're starting the next level with that same amount of HP. I guess Bowie and the Blue Bombers are too broke for a Rob 64. I mean, there is a mechanic in the game, but I'm not convinced she, does anything other than give me a laser upgrade when I don't need one. Thanks, lady. Hashtag not my Rob. I mean, to be fair, at least when you die, you come back and you have full HP. But yeah, there are limited lives. So yeah. So this would actually be a fine idea. Like, really on paper, I think this is a really good idea. But I do think that the game kind of gives you health a little too sparsely. The checkpoint in the middle of the level also does not heal you, by the way. It does not heal you. This does introduce a cool idea in which you can restart the run if you feel you have too low HP to really survive the next mission. But restarting a level entirely costs a life, and those are not exactly dealt out frequently either. You can just quit out of the game to the main menu and go back in that way without losing a life. The game does save your progress at the checkpoint even if you back out entirely from the game, which is actually a really nice little quality of life feature. It's also one you can abuse. Don't tell them about it. I think the game is actually better for that. But this damage carrying over to the next level concept was one that I found myself kind of mixed on overall. From a roguelike perspective, I really do like it, but I feel like it's something that lacks that final bit of polish as well. The game doesn't really feel like it's built for that kind of mechanic. So the result is that the game implements this roguelike mechanic that otherwise does nothing other than be kind of annoying. The enemy ship and boss designs could also use a bit of variety. Almost everything is very blocky in shape, and while it's good that there's consistency there, I would prefer fine-tuning the aesthetic for the enemies specifically. Even enemy fire looks kind of unrefined at points, such as this fight here where the bad guy is shooting... I think those are Doritos. And it's not even the Cool Ranch kind. We all know that's the best flavor, right? Right? To go along with this, I also think some of the enemies simply had too much HP. Everything felt fine with the highest level of laser upgrade, but prior to that, everything feels a bit too spongy. But also, at the risk of sounding like Goldilocks, when I turned on continuous fire and had the highest level of laser upgrades, I felt like bosses specifically were melting too quickly. I never reached a point in which I felt this aspect of the game was balanced. There are also a couple of bosses that just don't feel very effective as enemies. In one of the levels, there is a robot that is on the ground in an all-range mode arena, and the arena is quite large. And the robot is not particularly large at all, and it does mostly AoE attacks around itself. Given that the Cloud Cutters have a long range of fire, the boss feels entirely trivial. There's also a boss that you can just take out its arms and it just can't attack you anymore. It just sits there until you win. I thought that was a glitch at first, but I'm starting to think that maybe that was intentional, and I don't know why. The music has a wide variety between it's alright and pretty good. There are moments in which the music doesn't align with what's happening in the game. There were high-intensity moments coupled with tracks that didn't really have any sense of urgency in them. Similarly, there were moments in which the dialogue did not exactly convey what was happening on the screen either, such as a bad guy commenting that I did a clever trick, but all I did was turn my ship a little sharply to the left to lose them. Probably the most egregious issue is that you cannot skip the prologue at the start of a run. There is no option to skip it. You can skip any other cutscene in the whole game, but not that one. Is it possible to patch in a skip cutscene button? Don't get me wrong here. Very lovely prologue. well drawn, well narrated, bellissimo. However, by the time I'm on run number 4 of the day, I kind of don't want to hear about Grimclaw taking over the planet. I know he's taking over the planet. I know by now. I know he's evil. I know I gotta go stop him. Thank you, though, for the very lovely prologue. Actually, wait, I just thought about another issue that is probably more egregious. Teammates sometimes will not call out when they are being shot at and need assistance. This specifically happens a lot in the all-range mode levels. All of the teammates have very low HP, and sometimes will die before you even knew that they were in danger. Focusing on the level objective almost guarantees that your teammates will die. Unless you are really, really fast. Like seriously, there is a level in which you are shooting down little parts of this structure, and during the all-range mode, your teammates are flying around, but they're also getting shot at, and if you're not careful and you're too focused on just shooting the parts of the structure down, you're gonna look up and they're all gonna be dead. So what I did, instead of just focus the objective, is that I just flew around and I shot down every single possible threat to my teammates, and then I did the objective. And that did help, but it kind of felt silly that I had to do that. Like seriously, if these enemies sneezed on my teammates, it seems like they were just toast. Absolutely cooked. So yeah, I did not like that. From here, we will be going into spoiler territory. So this is your warning to skip ahead if you do not want spoilers. The gist of what I talk about in this section will be included in the summary, but it will be worded in a non-spoilery way. Go, go, go. Skip ahead if you want. Skip ahead. It's okay. Skip ahead. All right, let's do spoilers. I've already said it, but I gotta say it again because I cannot emphasize this enough. Wild Blue Skies has a problem in which it mimics Star Fox 64 to an uncomfortable degree. Level beats are sometimes so similar that if you have ever played Star Fox 64, you will already know what's coming almost instantly. At the start of this video, I showed a montage of some of the comparisons between this game and Star Fox 64. I thought about doing it again, but I feel like I've made my point. Instead, I want to read you this, which is something I wrote down when I was note-taking during my very first run of Wild Blue Skies. I reached the 3rd level of the easy route, where the blue bombers are trying to destroy a drill piercing into the ground. When I realized in the first few seconds that the mission was all-ranged mode with a large mission-related centerpiece in the middle, like the Fortuna or Ficina level from Star Fox 64, I told myself, if I shoot down a few enemy ships, and an enemy team of 4 characters appears to stop me, I am turning the game off for the day, and then I'm going to go scream into a wall. When I shot several ships down and an enemy team of 4 appeared to stop me, I unfortunately did not go through with my threat and kept playing the game out of a morbid curiosity to see how further the devs would continue to fly so perilously close to the sun. This was not the only time that this sort of thing happened, unfortunately. There were moments that I could predict exactly what would happen, not due to tropes, but due to how similar these games are. Even the final boss is nonsensical in how it replicates Andros.
And now, you are mine!
But wait, Amalia, you may say, surely they did something different for the
What have you done?
Like, okay. I rolled my eyes at the Head and Hands boss, but I acknowledge that even if it wasn't what I wanted to see, it was inevitable. But when I got to the true form of Grimclaw, only accessible from the hard route, by the way. Tell me where I've heard that one before. He's just a floating head. My guy. Grimclaw is an engineer. I'm pretty sure of machines, like it's implied to be machines. Why is he a floating head? This doesn't make sense! Him turning himself into a floating head makes no sense. At least with Andros, he was like a bioweapons engineer guy. So what the heck? As mentioned earlier, you can only get the true ending by doing the hard route and approaching via the channel level as opposed to the foundry level. Both of these levels are pretty on-the-nose references to Area 6 and Bulls. In the true ending, after Grimclaw is defeated, he seemingly strikes Bowie and Bowie falls out of his ship. I got excited for a moment, thinking that maybe something would happen that would defy the formula. But then after a moment, Bowie is seemingly just back in his ship doing an escape sequence. But since there's no James McCloud figure in the game, the people who guide him out are his team. This could have made for a really cool moment, but it falls short because the dynamics between the teammates are barely shown in the dialogue. Instead, it feels like, oh, we have to have an escape sequence because starfox-64 had one. That part where it seemed like Bowie died for a second, ignore that happened at all. I love starfox-64. It is one of the first games I ever played. But I was not joking when I said that I didn't want Nintendo to remake it. And I didn't want an indie studio to remake it either. Yes, you have a cast of amazingly designed furries, but from a glance, you can tell that Bowie is supposed to be Fox, Thorn is supposed to be Slippy, Chuck is supposed to be Peppy, and Ro is supposed to be Falco. And very rarely, you will have a character that you can tell is a blend of two different characters, like Jill here, who is very much a blend of Yaru Depon and Rob64. While I do think the characters deviate slightly from who they are inspired by, they don't deviate enough to feel like actual characters. And this is a problem that a lot of starfox-likes have. They tend to just make Fox, Slippy, Falco, and Peppy over and over and over again. It's like they can't come up with new characters. Everyone just has to be the same. But Wild Blue Skies has done this to a degree that is shocking, frankly. Grimclaw is pretty obviously Andros. He even has practically the same backstory as Andros. There is an evil team under Grimclaw called the Prowlers, who have 4 members. There is a character named Wardle, who acts greedy and makes a jab at Chuck, the Peppy-coded character, implying that they used to be colleagues. At least Caspian, the leader of the Prowlers, is a blend of Wolf and Andrew. He's cold and brutal acting, but also the obvious son / potential Nepo baby of Grimclaw. But I guess he's more useful than Andrew? At least to their credit, they did not give Bowie the same backstory as Fox McCloud. In fact, there is nothing tying Bowie to Grimclaw at all in this entire game that I could figure out. One would think that this is a choice that I would praise given how the game so blatantly is inspired by starfox-64. But that is, hilariously enough, actually a bad thing, because now you have a bad guy who virtually has no lore going up against a protagonist who also virtually has no lore. There's no sense of tension, no sense of emotion, no revenge, no grief. And this is a game that is a tribute to a space opera. Grimclaw is some guy that's a head-and-hands fight, and Bowie is just some guy who's been hired to stop him. And that leads me to the best way I can summarize this game's glaring issue. The problem with Wild Blue Skies is that it tries to emulate starfox-64 without adding anything new, and it took every wrong lesson to learn from the game it was so heavily inspired by. Think back to the charge shot and continuous fire being on 2 different buttons. There was no reason to do that, other than to differentiate the game from starfox-64. It's not exactly fluid game design. But if there was something to keep from the Star Fox formula, it was probably how shooting and charging your shots work, because that is just simply fluid and smooth game design, at least compared to the alternative. And if they had kept that but opted to change other things about the game, I think it could have still carved its own identity out much cleaner. There were things to change and expand upon, and things to not change. This was something that should have not changed. And the choice to gut any sort of backstory between the antagonist and protagonist is another. A major driving force in the Lilat Wars is Fox McCloud's grief. Yes, Bro gets paid to shoot down Andross's soldiers, and also rocks, but at the climax of the game, he is facing his father's killer. He is doing this in part for his father. James McCloud haunts the narrative of the Lilac Wars, and that sets the tone for the overarching game. Wild Blue Skies doesn't try to imitate that, which is fine, but it also does not try to fill that void with anything. It's essentially just some dudes hired to fight some evil guy, and that leaves the entire thing feeling just kind of empty. Like the game goes through the motions of Star Fox 64 without understanding why those motions were good to begin with. Recently, there's been a lot of discourse about clone games and if it's okay for them to exist, especially if the original creators are no longer interested in making games like that. I'm okay with there being other starfox-likes and have played through several. I really like Fur Squadron and Exodiac, for instance, which were both created by independent studios. Yes, they have some nods to Star Fox, but their games are still solidly their own identities. With Wild Blue Skies, I just feel like it is shameless in its inspiration, even if it is legally distinct enough. And that does not feel creative or exciting to me. Nintendo does not own the on-rails shooter genre or the concept of a furry on-rails shooter. I don't want them to own that. I want there to be more starfox-likes out there, but not like this. I would be a poor reviewer if I didn't offer some advice on some things I would like to see. I'm definitely not a game dev, so I'm not sure how feasible any of this is. But I am someone who has been playing the Star Fox series for around 30 years, so I'd like to think that I know a little bit of something, even if it's small. General polish on the gameplay itself would be good overall, such as speeding up the Cloud Cutter and its natural firing rate, but I think it'd be cool to see different kinds of power-ups too. I don't know what's feasible, but stuff like a temporary shield you can deploy to soak damage would be really cool, or maybe multi-lock lasers, or a secondary bomb type that can slow enemies down to pick them off faster. Maybe you can hold only one power-up at a time and they replace your regular bombs or something. For the levels, I actually think the locales are fantastic. I'd love to see the team's take on the blue bombers assaulting an enemy fortress or something. Maybe it's embedded in the side of a cliff, or it's floating on a ship in the sea. Maybe it's underground and they have to take a tunnel to reach it. I think you guys knocked the environments out of the park for sure, so I kind of want to see more cool stuff like really, look at this city that's like embedded into the landscape. That's really cool, and I'd love to see more of this. I think mission objectives could use a little bit of diversity, and upping the cinematic aspect as well. The Cloud Tops level, I think it is called, was actually really exciting, especially compared to the Foundry level, where I already could tell what was going to happen because I've played Star Fox 64 a lot of times. That cloud level was so cool. Seeing the boss weave through the clouds was a really lovely spectacle. More of this as well, please. For mission objectives, I think a lot of Star Fox-likes have struggled to break out of the fly-through level fight boss at end formula. For all range mode missions, you could do stuff that's like attacking an enemy base, and you have to beat X amount of enemies within a set time to win the mission. Or maybe for an on-rails section, you could try to, I'm kind of scared to say this, but an on-rails escort mission. Like trying to protect an NPC or maybe a big cargo ship could be kind of interesting, especially if it's built in a way that's not like Sector Z or the Temple level in this game, where it's big missiles that you just have to keep away from the middle. You guys have actually hit gold with this idea of Grimclaw having a very mechanical army. Do you know what people like a lot? Mechs. I know, maybe outside of your budget, but I was gonna suggest mech enemies in the review before I played the cloud level, and you guys kind of did that here, but like mechs are so diverse. I feel like you could add more, like a giant tiger mech maybe for Grimclaw himself. That would be a really fun way to distinguish him as a villain, and it would fit his character really nicely. For the Prowlers, I think I would consider altering their ship colors to differentiate them a bit from that of the blue bombers. I would also consider maybe going a different aesthetic with them. Wait, What if they had mechs? Huh? Regarding the levels, I noticed that there were some hidden objectives to stay on the hard route that I couldn't really make much sense of. I actually had to play the canyon level several times to understand what I had to do to not fall into the medium route. I think tying those hidden objectives to the lore or the mission itself would be a bit more ideal. For instance, with this level, you have to blow up these crystals. There's only one line that indicates they're important, otherwise it's Thorn, I think, saying how pretty they are. Maybe add something in here explaining what these gems are. I noticed they come back in the true final fight, but I'm not really sure what they do other than power stuff up. Do they have a name? I'd like to know more about these. And that kind of segues into the next section of suggestions, which is world building and characters. Hold your groans, I'll try to make this quick. I want to care about these characters and this world, and I think building these two things up is something that can be done in ways that don't require exuberant cutscenes either. For world building, a small thing you can do is just to edit the names of your levels slightly. Societies love naming things, and names can invoke feelings. For instance, Tolkien named the famous volcano in his story Mount Doom, and that name gives you an impression of how it is viewed by the local people. So speaking of volcanoes, there's this one here on the map. What's that volcano's name? Maybe something in the name could imply a sort of history about it. This archipelago here has a city on it. Surely the city has a name we could mention in the dialogue somewhere, right? Little things like this can make your world feel more alive rather than just set pieces to play through, and that can add a lot more to an immersive experience. It's brief world building, but it can contribute a lot. With that being said, please do not name this city Archipelago City, or I will cry. There were 3 points of world building that I noted that felt intriguing to me, but sadly they were never touched upon. The first one is the temple level and the religion that is seemingly tied to the locals. The second one, again, these purple rocks that seemingly power Grimclaw's forces. The third one was these submerged ruins. All of these were interesting lore points that I want to know more about. Maybe they were just made for aesthetic reasons, but they have the potential to shape the world of Wild Blue Skies and make it unique. And again, you don't need to write the Silmarillion about your world, but you can expand upon it just in the game dialogue. The mission briefings could also help there too. Moving on, the main 4 characters in this game need some extra development. I don't need detailed descriptions for each one, but I do want moments that make them stand out. Since this game favors gameplay over cutscenes, giving depth to the characters has to be done during gameplay. One way to do this that I think would be really neat, and something I don't really see in other starfox-likes, is if you had each character have a level that centers on their backstory. The level could be where they're from, or maybe it's where their family is located. Maybe it used to be a place that was significant to them before the war. You don't necessarily need to add more characters, you can tell enough of a story here with just dialogue exchanges. Unlike Star Fox 64, this game takes place on one planet. And because that's much more condensed than a galactic spanning conflict, that means that the characters have a higher chance of being personally impacted by the war. Maybe they've lost family members, or maybe they've been displaced. Maybe their family members have been imprisoned, or maybe they've been made to work for Grimclaw against their will. I think adding personal investment for these characters would do a lot for this game's enjoyability. I think adding a relationship between Grimclaw and Bowie would be ideal as well. There's a few different ways you could go about doing that. You could have them be a former mentor and apprentice, or maybe Grimclaw's family and Bowie's were close when Bowie and Caspian were young. I actually noticed the way that Caspian addresses Bowie felt like they were a little more familiar, or at least more familiar than passing acquaintances. I felt like there was personal animosity there, and I think it'd be really cool to explore that. In general, I always suggest fleshing the characters out to feel less like archetypes. The thing is, with archetypes, is that they're supposed to be a foundation for something, not the whole picture. And again, I think you guys can do this in the dialogue. By the way, Ro in the beginning animation has a picture in which she's ripped someone out of it. Probably a parent, judging from the photo's context. I want to know more about this. This was intentionally placed in the intro, and I was surprised when nothing really came of it. Please tell this story. I want to hear it. Also, why does she have a kunai in her character art? Is she a ninja? Why was that never mentioned? Anyways, flesh the characters out. I think that will go over really well, actually. And so, to summarize, I did not hate Wild Blue Skies, but I didn't like it because it felt like it wanted to be Star Fox 64 way too much. Levels and characters were too inspired for my personal taste. Some levels were nearly beat for beat the same game as Star Fox 64, and some characters were shamelessly similar to pre-existing ones as well. Some formula changes do exist, but they felt like they were made arbitrarily, and sometimes led to things just not making sense in the game's context, or just feeling like worse game design. While the game does have stuff it does not do in a similar fashion to Star Fox 64, the devs don't really replace the stuff taken out with anything of their own, leaving the experience rather hollow feeling. I couldn't connect with the game because the devs gave me nothing to connect to. To go along with these criticisms, I feel like the game lacked polish in several areas. Movement and firing felt slow until I toggled certain settings on. Some enemy HP balance felt kinda wonky, and some boss designs didn't feel as thought out as they should. Coupled with my teammates feeling like they were made of paper, there barely being any lore or story to get invested into, and the characters feeling overly inspired, the experience was both okay and simultaneously disappointing. In the moments that I did see creativity in the game, I felt happy and yet somehow even more disappointed that Chuhai Labs opted to not pursue the passion that was clearly there for what they're making. They say on their site that they're all about unique game design, but I only got to see glimpses of that. I want to see more. I want to see the game that they wanted to make, not a game that felt to me like it was a reskin of one that already existed. With all of that being said, I find myself hesitant to recommend this game or not recommend it. If you think you can look past all of the criticisms I've made and want to experience it yourself, I by no means feel like it's a bad game or anything. Some people may not see an issue with it being so similar to Star Fox 64 or having very little story. They may vibe with the controls in a way that I didn't. But as a creative, I am bothered by the amount of inspiration the game takes, and I feel like it offered nothing for me that wasn't already offered in other games in the genre. I hope that if Chuhai Labs makes a follow-up to this game, that they consider developing the IP in a more unique way. I do think there's good here, but it's vastly overshadowed by how it tries to do what another game did 30 years ago. While I found myself disappointed in this game, I want to wish Chuhai Labs the best with all of their future projects. I hope for the best for Wild Blue Skies as an IP, and I hope it develops into a franchise with its own identity. I wanted to have a two-cake situation with the releases of Wild Blue Skies and Star Fox 2026. While maybe that didn't happen here, it can in the future. And if/when that happens, it'll be a great day, I think. Thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.